Almost all of us start our sim racing journey with a basic set of wheel and pedals strapped to a desk or maybe on a wheel stand in front of a TV. And as we go down the rabbit hole, maybe we end up with something more like this behind me, a full-blown sim racing cockpit, monitor stand, massive setup. And while this is amazing, there is something missing with that. And it's the charm of those early days and those simple setups. So I'm excited to have the opportunity to relive that charm in a way with this. The Wheel Stand Lite 2.0 by Next Level Racing. This thing has just released. And so, full disclosure, Next Level Racing did send this wheel stand to me for free. That said, they get no editorial control over the video. All the thoughts and opinions are my own. I always want to give you my true feelings on these things so you can make properly informed decisions. If you do decide that this is a product you want to purchase or any other Next Level Racing product is something you want to purchase, I do have an affiliate code down in the description below along with a 5% discount code to save you some money at checkout. So let's go ahead and get this thing unboxed, assembled, and set up to see if it brings us back to those simpler times. When you open the box, you'll find that everything is wrapped in bubble wrap to make sure that this shows up at your doorstep well protected. On top of that, the tubing and the wheel stand itself is wrapped in this foam sheeting to give it some extra protection. Straight out of the box, you're going to have something that's already basically assembled with just a few more steps. Now, inside of the smaller boxes, you're going to find everything you need to complete your assembly. There's this lanyard that invites you to their Discord community, some extra decals, a manual that's going to walk you through the entire assembly process, plus all of the extra mounting plates that you're going to need to mount up your wheel, your shifter, and any other accessory you might have, plus some feet, and finally all the hardware that you're ever going to need. Assembling the wheel deck is pretty straightforward. All you need to do is screw in 4 screws. Just apparently not so easy for me because I did put it on reverse the first time. So after flipping that around, everything was nice and good to go, and you can see the nice tilt action that the wheel deck does have when mounted correctly. Next up, we have the shifter mount, which can be mounted on either side of the wheel deck depending on your preference. You have the deck plus this adapter plate and 4 screws to put it all together. It's a little bit harder to mess this one up. And when you're done, you have this lovely wheel deck plus shifter mount with all the holes you need to mount up your equipment. Next up, you're going to want to add the feet to the bottom of your wheel stand. There's rubber coating on the bottom of these feet, so it's going to help it keep the thing in place as you use it. You can see here, I'm using it on carpet. It worked well there. I'm sure it's going to work on hard surfaces really well too. The other smaller box in the bigger box contains your chair cradle. What this is going to do is it'll allow your chair to kind of stay in contact with the wheel stand as you use it. There are a couple of these arms that we install on either side of the wheel stand and tighten those in place that the cradle is going to mount into. Now, don't tighten these side screws up too much. You want it to be able to pivot a little bit because when you fold up the wheel stand and stand it up, the whole stand can actually stand up on the tray as well. That tray also has some felt pads on the bottom, so when it's on the ground, it's not going to scratch up your floor or anything like that. Finally, it's time to mount up the good stuff, the wheel and pedals. I flipped the wheel deck up vertically so I could hang the G29 on it, and then screwed in those bottom screws, which are provided by Next Level Racing. Then I tightened up the little grippy feet and adjusted the angle of the wheel so it was all good to go. Now, one thing Next Level Racing also includes are cable ties, so you can manage the cables coming out of the back of your wheel and route them down the tubing towards the pedal deck. We're going to mount up the pedals next. Gosh, I love cable management. Now let's go ahead and loosen up the pedal deck so we can lean that forward and get our pedals mounted up. Next Level Racing provides all the hardware we need to mount up any pedals on the market. In this case, the 6 screws needed to mount up the G29 pedals. When we tilt that pedal deck back down, we can now screw the pedal deck back in at the angle we choose. I chose the highest tilt based on these pedals and what would be comfortable. There are also cable ties in the box for these cables as well. Yay, more cable management. So now you have this nice, neat, organized setup and it's ready to go. There are even cable ties that worked to hold in the power block, which I really appreciate, making a nice and tidy setup. Now, the wheel stand is super easy to fold back up, and when it folds up, it's actually really nice and compact, which makes it really easy just to lean it up against a wall, beside your desk, or in a corner out of the way somewhere. Speaking of desks, let's get this set up at the desk. It was really easy to find usable adjustments quite quickly. Just make sure to tighten up the uprights with these thumb screws and then just pull that wheel stand into place and set up your chair. You can adjust the height very easily with just a couple of screws and boom. Really easy to find a very usable seating situation. Okay, now let's talk about some of the features of this wheel stand. First of all, it's only $149. Uses a round tube design, which I think looks nicer than aluminum profile, and it's also going to be quite sturdy as well. It's also a little bit lighter weight than something like aluminum profile or the steel square tubing that I've used on other wheel stands. At the end of the year, there's going to be a full cockpit upgrade available for this wheel stand for an additional $200. And I think if you want something that gives you an upgrade path, that sounds intriguing. It has a height adjustable and tilt adjustable wheel deck, allowing you to place that wheelbase wherever is best for you. The pedal plate is also fully adjustable as well by being able to tilt it and move it backwards and forward. And there are a ton of mounting areas on the pedal deck, so you can put your pedals anywhere that you need to. I found it very easy to get things set up and in a comfortable position very quickly, which I always like. I really hate messing around and having to fine tune things, so if you can find a way to sit comfortably and race comfortably in a really easy way in a really short amount of time, I love that. And this wheel stand gave me that. It also includes a plate for a shifter. So if you have a shifter and want a shifter with your setup, that's already thought out here and already included with things. And the nice thing about that shifter plate as well is that it can be mounted on the left or right hand side depending on your preference. Otherwise, you can mount like a cup holder up to it or something like that. It's also very easy to stow away and store. It's kind of lightweight in comparison to other wheel stands I've used, and the folding mechanism is so much easier to use on this than other wheel stands I've used. But that lightweightness and the folding mechanism being a little bit better overall equal a package that ends up being easier to fold and tuck away. So if that's something important to you, this is a really nice option. The other thing I'll say is when it does fold up, you need to watch out for the cables getting pinched between some of the tubing, particularly around where the wheelbase mounts up to this thing and where it folds up near the top. So just make sure your cables don't get pinched or severed when you fold this up like that. It includes a cradle for your chair to put its wheels in so that when you're braking, your chair is not moving in relation to the wheel stand, which means that you can be more consistent on the brakes, which is something I really like and haven't had in the past with wheel stands, although wheel stands now do offer that in a lot of cases. I do think if you want to upgrade to load cell pedals and you're looking for a lightweight stowaway solution for that, this is a great choice. Having the tray to keep your chair in line with the wheel stand is going to be invaluable for you being able to use load cell pedals, and there is no budge in this at all with the G29 pedals, so I suspect any entry-level load cell pedals will work really well with this. The assembly is quick and easy, and as you can see, we've already gone through that. It was a very simple setup, which I really appreciate. Next Level Racing do a good job with instructions in general, so even if the setup is more complicated for something you're getting from Next Level Racing, you do know that you're getting a nice instruction manual, and usually you get a QR code to a build video that you can build along with as well. Okay guys, so I've got to admit something to you. I made a little bit of a silly mistake. And I did a bunch of drive testing before making sure that I tightened up everything. And so one thing I noticed while driving previously is that there was a little bit too much back and forth movement. And you can see there still is some back and forth movement, but not nearly as much as there used to be. And the thing is, there are some bolts down at the bottom of the wheel support that come loose out of the box. And I'd imagine the reason why they're loose out of the box is simply because this thing has to rotate around those bolts. And so tightening them up makes it harder for those to rotate. So while you're assembling, you want those to be quite loose. But after assembly, you want to make sure to tighten up those bolts so that you have nice rigidity in this thing. Now, I'd probably keep the Allen wrench around that comes with the wheel stand, just so you can loosen and tighten those on demand. But now that I've tightened those down appropriately, this is actually nice and rigid. And so one thing I was going to say before I tighten them down is probably I'd max out at 5 Newton meters, even though they say that this thing can go up to 10 Newton meters. But now after I've actually tightened those, I do think this could easily go up to 10 Newton meters without any sort of issues. Okay, so now that I've had time to play around with the wheel stand for a while, I'll kind of just give you my thoughts in no particular order. I think the first thing is that I love how it folds up and how easy it is to stow away. It's light and easy to move around. And I think if you're looking for a solution that you need to be able to fold up and store somewhere or set off to the side in a place where it doesn't really take up a lot of space, this is a really good solution for that. If you're in the market for a wheel stand, if you want something light but sturdy that can fold up and be stowed away and maybe even upgrade to a full sim rig later, I think this is an option you should absolutely look into. I think it looks nice and it serves the purpose that you're buying it for really, really well. Obviously, upgrading this thing to a full rig is not going to be like having an aluminum profile rig, but I think you'd be really happy with this thing either as a wheel stand or a full rig, and I like how easy and light it is to actually pick up and stow away versus other wheel stands I've used in the past. Plus, the pedal tray on this is more rigid than wheel stands I've used in the past. Overall, I'm impressed. Good job, Next Level Racing.